We are going live to Facebook, so be on your best behavior.
Dwight, that picture come in yet?
They'd shut down for the holidays. They'll get cranked back up this week.
Ask Shane Burton what the Gators got for Christmas. They got some shoestrings so I keep her shoes a little tighter. All right, here we go. Is Vicky gonna be here tonight?
She's here.
She's
She's
supposed
just
to be.
hiding. So you can't see her.
What's that?
I said, Vicky's here. She's just hiding so you can't see her.
Okay.
You'll find Waldo before you find her.
All right.
Is Renee with her?
Yes, they are social distance towards the back of the courtroom.
What time's everybody got?
I have 7:01, Mr. Chairman.
Let's roll with it then. Good evening, everybody. I think we have good attendance tonight. Let's see, looking at the roll call, Vicky's there. And the only one I guess that's missing, as we mentioned before, well, Richard is not. Amber Russell, is Amber here or Gary Walsh? No, okay. Well, maybe they'll join us here in a minute. I guess one of the first things we'll need to do is to review the minutes, if you haven't already, that Amy had sent out for the prior meeting. And the prior meeting was last held on July the 9th of this year. Are there any additions or subtractions or any comments on the minutes that were presented to us from the July the 9th meeting?
Mr. Chairman, before we get into that, the last committee I brought up and some direction from the comptroller's office, and I'd like to do it for this committee as well. One of the requirements the comptroller's office has passed along to us is that at the beginning of each meeting, the membership of the committee or board vote that it's necessary to hold this meeting virtually due to the COVID-19. And so I would ask if someone could make a motion and second that, and we get that voted on, and all votes must be by roll call.
Okay. Everybody hear that? Anybody need that again? He cut out for just a second, but I think I got it all. So I take a motion on the floor from what the mayor had just mentioned. Do I have a motion for that?
Make a motion that we hold this meeting virtual because of COVID-19.
Okay, do I have a second to that motion? Mr. Dickey? Okay, I have a motion and a second that we're doing this by Zoom because of the COVID-19. All in favor of that motion, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Does that need to be a roll call vote, Mayor?
The comptroller's direction was that all votes are by roll call.
Let's do it all then. Okay. Okay, Amy, go ahead. Amber's joined us.
Mary Ann, do you need me to call roll or are you okay doing that?
I can do it if you can, if that's okay. Did you say Amber is on Zoom now? But Gary Walsh is not with us, correct?
Yeah.
So Bill Ferguson,
Yes.
Shane Burton,
Yes.
Coy Dickey,
Yeah.
Amber Russell, Amber Russell,
Yes.
Vicky Howard. That's all I have on my, as far as the members of the committee.
Okay, that motion does carry. So let's, with nothing else there, let's go back for just a second and read the minutes to take a look at those minutes. If anybody has any additions or subtractions or comments on the minutes from the last meeting, please bring them forward now. And if not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve these minutes. Anybody?
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Shane Burton's got the second. Okay. All in favor of that motion, let's go through the roll call again and vote again, please.
Bill Ferguson,
Aye.
Shane Burton, Coy Dickey, Amber Russell,
Yes.
Vicky Howard. That motion carried.
Okay. The next thing we need to, so those minutes are approved then. One thing we need to do right off the bat, since our meeting was last on July the 9th, we have not elected our officers yet for this year. And at this point, I'd like to mention who the officers are presently. Is Bill Ferguson is the chairman of the committee. The vice chairman is Richard Johnson, and then the secretary is Mary Ann Baker. That's what we have currently. At this time, I'd like to take any suggestions or nominations for these officers, for I guess for the chairmanship. Any nominations?
I vote to keep them the same for
Okay.
the chair.
Would you like to keep all these the same or just the chairmanship itself?
The chair.
Okay, the chair that stay the same. Any other nominations for that? Anybody else? Yeah. Okay. All right, then we'll cease the nominations and I guess we'll vote that by acclamation. Okay. Do we need to vote for that as roll call, Amy? Thought we would, because they're all, yeah. Okay,
Bill Ferguson,
yes.
Shane Burton,
Yes.
Coy Dickey,
Yes.
Amber Russell,
Yes.
five yes and two absent. Oh, Vicky Howard, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, so that does carry. Vice president nominations. Anybody for vice president? Richard Johnson is currently the vice president. I mean, he's the vice chairman, sorry, president, vice chairman. Any nominations for the vice chair? Any nominations for the vice chair?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that you leave the other two people the way they are.
By acclamation. Okay, so that'll be by voting by acclamation, both Richard Johnson to retain as the vice chair and Mary Ann Baker to retain as the secretary.
Yes.
I have a second from that motion.
Second.
Mr. Jewell with the second. All in favor of that? Vote aye. Amy?
Bill Ferguson,
Aye.
Shane Burton.
Aye.
Coy Dickey,
Uh,
Amber Russell,
Aye.
Steve Howard. 6 yes and 2 absent.
Okay. Okay, so that's done. That's complete. Discussion items tonight, as you can see by the agenda here, it says Personnel Policy Amendment A, COVID-19 sick leave. And the mayor probably has a lot to talk about on this one to kind of instruct us as to what we should be reviewing or talking about now. So Mayor, I'm going to turn this over to you for just a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I did send an email, I think about 5:22 this afternoon after we were making some last minute changes that we've been working on for quite a while in this policy. And I apologize for not getting out sooner, but we had a lot of loopholes that kind of became apparent at the last minute. We were trying to get those addressed. And there'll probably be further changes as we go along. This is kind of unusual, and I'll give you a little bit of background before we go into it. I believe in March of last year, Congress passed the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act that included an emergency paid sick leave for anyone meeting 6 reasons for COVID. The first 3 were involving the employee itself, him or herself, and the other 3 were involving caring for a family member or a child. That was set to expire on December 31st, and it was thought that was going to be extended by Congress. However, at the last minute, I think can you all hear me? Okay, there we go. It cleared up. My computer was jumping all over the place, but it was thought that was going to be extended by Congress here at the end of the year. However, it did not get put in there. I had talked to our legislative delegation in Congress and was told that everyone thought it was going to be in there, but at the last minute, they got a 5,000+ page bill dumped on them 6 hours before the vote, and it turns out it was not in it. So that's left a lot of public agencies scrambling to see if they want to provide this kind of leave, and if so, what are going to be the provisions for that. I'm going to ask that we do continue or create some kind of COVID leave, mainly as an incentive for employees not to come in with potentially a pandemic virus, especially now that we have 2 different strains, one from the UK and one from South Africa, that seem to be more contagious than the one we originally had. So, and if there's any questions on the background, I'll go ahead and take those. And if not, I'll just move right into the proposed sick leave. All right, I'll go ahead and move into the sick leave. This applies to all full-time and part-time employees, and the time frame will be from January 1st of 2021 to December 31st of 2021. It'll basically make them eligible for one of 2 reasons, and the first is if the employee is subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID. They have to provide a copy of that order along with a leave request form. The second reason is the employee has been advised by a licensed healthcare provider to quarantine or self-isolate due to concerns related to COVID-19. And the employee will have to provide documentation from the healthcare provider of that isolation or quarantine advice, or they have to provide the name of the employer who advised the employee to quarantine or self-isolate. The amount of leave in the original bill, the original leave was 80 hours. We tried to make this, get it up to our FMLA requirements, which is 10 working days out of work, then you can go on FMLA. So we made it 10 working days is the leave. And then that way, if they are hospitalized or have some other continuing symptoms that their healthcare provider has advised them not to go back to work, to continue to isolate. This will get them till the FMLA. Again, this, as far as figuring out hours for or employees who have variable hours, we'll use an average of their working hours for the last 6 months. And this is just adopting a provision from the Fair Labor Standards Act as how to compute hours for part-time or variable scheduled employees. The leave must be taken consecutive, which means they can't take it intermittently. It has to be all taken at one time. You can't take a few days here and then come back and work another few days. It has to all be at once. The rate of pay we set up would be the employee's regular rate of pay without any consideration for overtime. The employee can't use COVID-19 sick leave under the policy before using any other accrued time off or any other reason. Hopefully, as we said, if they need more time, we've structured to get them to FMLA so they can use that. Is everyone here having some issues on my computer? I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. Amy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. You've got like a beat going on.
Kind
Yeah,
of a
I'm
missing
having some
quick.
issues. I'm gonna have some issues with my microphone. I'm gonna switch off with someone else if that's all right. That's better. All right. And the procedures for requesting the leave is the employee must make the request to their department head and give the specific reason for the leave as soon as possible on the first day of the leave. And this is, that provision right there copies our existing sick leave policy as far as with the notice requirements. And they will have to fill out a special COVID-19 sick leave request form, which we have drafted, and it should have been included what I sent out to the committee earlier. We will allow verbal notification given that this is a very potentially deadly disease or virus if someone catches it. So we will do verbal notification. And one thing we will address later is we do have the capability to submit a form that they can sign electronically in return, or they may be able to do a with permission, give their department head or elected official permission to sign on their behalf, and then they return to work, they'll sign and date it at that time. The sick leave must be approved by the employee's department head or elected official. And there is a provision on that sick leave request form that for the department head to sign that they have approved that leave. And once the COVID-19 sick leave has begun, we do have basically it's a 3-day check-in with the employee and the department head or elected official so they can check in and see how their recovery is going and what their health status is or potential return to work. This was done by Boards of Education during COVID leave for teachers, and so we just kind of adopted that into this policy. I don't know if it was done in Trousdale County, but I know others across the state were doing this, and we thought maybe that was a good idea. People like to check in and see how things are going, so we just included that in here. And once the COVID-19 sick leave has begun, the employee or their supervisor, that check-in period is like every 3 days. So after the first day, 3 days later, the department head or elected official will need to check in with them. And we have a form that just document that they called them, write down the date and time, and then just kind of sign their name to it. During the COVID-19 sick leave, the employee must certify that they will not work for any other employer during the time they would have been normally scheduled to work for the Hartsville-Trousdale County government. And that's just to make sure that this leave is for them to stay home and not spread this virus. It's not for them to be on leave and then try to work for somebody else. So this hopefully will incentivize or disincentivize that behavior. I don't think it's been an issue, but it could potentially be. There was some examples I've heard from other areas, so we want to put that in there. And that any employee who falsely certifies that they will not work for another employer during this COVID leave is subject to discipline under the personnel policy. As far as the documentation required for the leave, they have to submit their leave request to the department head or elected official, and they must include provide an order, a quarantine order, a copy of a quarantine order, self-isolation order, doctor's note, or test results that can be submitted either via email, text, or fax to their department head or elected official. and they need to provide that as soon as possible after they receive that document, but no later than 24 hours after they receive that document. They will also need to provide a signed leave request form, and when they come back to work, they'll need to sign a return to work form that does have them basically attest that they are over COVID-19, they're not showing any symptoms, and that they are no longer a danger to spread the virus as they return to work. All required documentation must be stapled to the employee's timesheet and submitted to the mayor's office at the same time the timesheet is submitted. That way we make sure when it's submitted to process payroll, we have their assigned timesheet and all the documentation that's going to be required under audit, that we have that documentation immediately, because we don't want to have to chase it down. That delays payroll and just creates nothing but a headache. And if that documentation is not provided to the mayor's office at the same time the timesheet is submitted, the employer has the right to use other regular sick or vacation leave, or the employee would be given leave without pay. So we do put kind of a stick in there to make sure that they do provide that documentation once they get it. The CDC does have guidelines for people that have previously tested positive for COVID-19, that if they have tested positive previously, they will only be ordered to quarantine or self-isolate if they were showing symptoms of COVID-19, have consulted a healthcare provider, and all other possible causes of the symptoms have been ruled out. So we have adopted those guidelines in here as well. We also ask that if the employee is tested again and tests positive for COVID-19, that they provide a copy of that positive test. So as for the same documentation that's required if they were getting it for the first time is required if they test positive subsequently. I don't know that that's been an issue at this point. There's been some discussion in medical circles about whether or not you get reinfected or possibly the virus reactivates, but just in case that does happen, the CDC has guidelines for that, so we basically just adopted those into our personnel policy. The COVID-19 sick leave is not going to carry over to next year. I'm sorry, I'm breaking up again. Just a second here.
Well, I'm just going to stand in front of this webcam and see if you can hear me better that way.
We can hear you good.
All right. The sick leave cannot be carried over past December 31st of this year. It cannot be paid out, and it cannot count towards the employee's retirement calculation for Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. It is only here as necessary for employees who test positive for COVID as a public health measure. It is not to be considered as their normal benefit. This is just due to the circumstances we're under at this time. If the employee exhausts this sick leave, they can then, we have structured it that they can then go in under FMLA if for some reason they're hospitalized and can't come back to work, or they're still showing symptoms and their healthcare provider has advised them to continue to self-isolate or quarantine. So we do have provided another way that they can continue to be out and still get paid, because I know some of our employees are living paycheck to paycheck and they've got to pay rent and put food on the table. So we want to make sure that we provided something there to continue on in case they needed it. Upon their return to work, they have to fill out, sign, and submit to their department head or elected official our approved COVID-19 return to work form, which basically has them go through and check boxes stating that they have tested positive, they've done the required quarantine or self-isolation period, or they've tested negative. The CDC kind of has different guidelines based on different circumstances, and we basically adopted the CDC's guidelines about when you can return to work or when you can leave self-isolation into that return to work form. And we do have the employee attest to that. That way we tried to cut off any arguments that we've created an unsafe work environment. So we're trying to cover all our bases as far as liability and make sure that we've got documentation to back that up and that the employee can return to work. If the employee has to take this leave, they will not be penalized. They will not lose their job or be discriminated against or disciplined in any way whatsoever. We will make sure that we had this specifically stated in there to try to address any concerns that any employees may have. And then if they have questions, we provided the phone number and email address for Vicki Howard, the Human Resources Assistant, and they can submit the questions to us, whether it's department head or employee or whoever it may be, and we'll try to address those as we go forward. One thing I was working on and I was not able to get together in time to submit with this, but I will submit it. And I need to talk to Mr. Beller. I submit this form to him in the same email I did everyone else. I haven't been able to speak to him about it. So this is just our changes right now. Any changes to the personnel policy do require him to sign off on it. However, so that is another step we're going. So again, I apologize. We were just trying to put this together and we were receiving no direction whatsoever. And you've got 95 counties and who knows how many municipalities, and everybody's trying to figure it out on their own. So we put this together. We think it's pretty good. There might be some changes going forward based on legal advice from Mr. Beller or advice we get from CTAS or MTAS or just loopholes we find in it whatsoever. But we think we got it in a pretty good position right now. And that's pretty much the policy we're going to submit. At this time, I can take any questions on that COVID-19 sick leave.
I'd like to comment that it looks very comprehensive and very well done. I looked it over and I thought this is amazing, that we've got something this comprehensive and this well put together. Like you say, we've had very little direction on it, but I don't see anything that needs to be changed or added or needed in my point, but Brandon?
Mr. Chairman, I had actually looked at I've gone over it a couple of times what I can read on my phone, and I would approve certainly the form and the basic content of it right now as it's written. There may be some fine tuning later on, but and it may be a work in progress. I think the mayor alluded to that a little bit, but it's something that we need. We've had a lot of dialogue about this between the end of the last year and this year, so it's a culmination of a lot of hard work from the staff that you have in the mayor's office. So I would approve it as to the form and the content as it stands right now.
Got any questions? No one, all the commissioners here are shaking their heads that they don't have any questions. So if anyone online has a question, I'll attempt to answer it as best I can. But like I said, this is kind of really a fluid situation. And I will also address, we had those 2 elections in the state of Georgia. You have now had a change over in the Senate. You got to change over in the presidency. This could all be a moot point come January 21st. So we're just trying to cover our bases from right now. I don't know what's going to happen on the federal level. I've heard conflicting things. I have no idea what's going on. So we're trying to get something in place to make sure we've got it covered regardless of what Congress or the president does. Mr. Chairman, you're still muted.
Okay, that's better. So if there's no other discussion, we can go ahead and take a motion if somebody would like to move this forward for approval.
I make a motion to move forward.
I have a motion to move this forward. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, have a motion and a second to approve of this motion. Go ahead and do the roll call, Miss Amy.
Bill Ferguson,
Yes.
Shane Burton,
Yes.
Coy Dickey,
Yes.
Amber Russell,
Yes.
Vicky Howard. Yes. 6 yes and 2 absent.
So that motion does carry. Okay. Moving on to item B, the wage study.
Mr. Chairman, I could bring up one other item, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it up. I just realized I forgot to do this. We were going to submit a administrative leave with pay restructuring. We had changed that after the COVID-19 hit to kind of cover our bases very, very quickly. We are going to suggest that we go back to what it was previous to COVID-19, which is basically an department head or elected official can give an employee an administrative leave if they've used everything else, if there's good cause, and it's limited to 3 days. So what we're going to suggest is we go back to what we had previously before COVID-19 hit as far as our administrative leave, because we've done this COVID-19 sick leave. We think that'll cover the COVID end of things, which is what we originally had amended the administrative leave to kind of cover until we got more direction from the federal government or someone else.
Okay. Now, do we need to go ahead and put that in the form of a motion and then move that forward, or?
Yes, sir, if we could, because they're technically two different parts of the policy. So I would feel better if we could get a motion on that going forward to make that change. And as I said, it's basically just going back to what it had been.
Uh-oh, it froze up.
So basically, we need a motion to
Hear
go
me
back
now?
to the previous-
Yeah, we froze up. Can you hear me?
A little bit, yeah.
Ain't technology grand.
It's nice when it worked.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, we're having technical difficulties on our end. The Wi-Fi kind of goes up and down here. So if there was any questions or anything, I'm sorry I didn't catch them. Everybody looked like I'd shocked them to death, so I don't know.
No, we waited because we knew you were having some difficulty. So are there any members that would like to ask questions or have some discussion points at this time? All right, if not, I'd entertain a motion to approve of this.
I'll make that.
Motion to approve.
All right, Ms. Russell with a motion to approve that. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Mary Ann Baker, will you take the roll call? All in favor of this?
Bill Ferguson,
Yes.
Shane Burton.
Yeah.
Roy Dickey. Amber Russell,
Yes.
Vicky Howard. 6 yes and 2 absent.
Okay. Is that everybody? Okay, motion does carry. Okay, so now we got that covered. Back to item B on the wage study. Last time we had talked about that, I think Vicky was looking into that a little bit. I think she has some information that possibly she could share with us, or Mayor, if she has relayed that on to you, if you could share that, where we are with the wage study.
Yes, sir. We're going to try it with a PA system again.
Okay.
We reached out to 3 consultants, all 3 of whom were recommended by various organizations. And we did get 3 proposals. I believe I sent those out to the committee members sometime in maybe mid-December. I will go over those. Most of them, they kind of do the same thing. They're going to come in, talk to all the department heads, elected officials, create job descriptions for the positions, and then use those job descriptions to figure out what the wage range of these positions should be based on various requirements or additional specific knowledge, those kind of things like that. I'm breaking up again. I'm just going to stand in front of this right now. If we need to do something different, we will. As I said, basically, they're going to come in and talk to all the department heads, elected officials, get information on the positions, draft new job descriptions, and then use those job descriptions to classify pay for positions. And they will use the Department of Labor data, and they will also go and compare us to other communities across the state, some of them that are bigger than us and some of them are same size. So we'll get kind of a broad spectrum view of our compensation for our employees. And then they will come back and propose a pay scale, and then also give advice on how we need to structure our policies and whatnot. And then they'll be happy to suggest alternatives, phase in, those kind of things. And it's pretty much the same all across for all 3 proposals. So I know that's a kind of a high level view of it. if there's more specific questions, I'll try to get into that, because I sent this out, and if you've had a chance to look over it, I'll answer any questions at this time, but they're all three proposals kind of suggest all the three same things, but I can take questions at this time. I'm sorry, I'll go ahead.
Of the three, do any of the members or mayor yourself, do any of you all have a preference of one over the other? Or is there, Mayor, do you know if there's one that seems to fit our needs better?
Mr. Chairman, I will address that. One of our proposals from Mike Humphreys, to be honest with you, he just gave us a proposal because we asked for one. He's not really interested in doing it. And I think he quoted a price of $60,000. Given that he doesn't want to do it and the price is so high, I would like to rule out Mr. Humphreys' organization. The other two is Mr. Russell and Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson to date has been more responsive to any queries we put forth, and he's been more responsive than Mr. Russell has. Both of them are highly recommended. Mr. Thompson, however, is currently doing a wage study, I believe, for Smith County. If Mr. Beller, can you not hear me?
No, I can hear you.
I'll just do like this. I'll get nice and cozy with the webcam. Mr. Thompson is currently doing
Some other microphone's picking you up. I don't think it's the webcam.
Maybe I turn off the microphone just in case.
I think, Bill, you need to mute. For some reason, it's picking you up
All right.
instead of him, and that's what's
Okay.
stopping it back and forth.
How about now? Good? Okay. All right. I'm sorry, I have a little, my computer is kind of jumping around on me, so I couldn't tell which microphone I was using. I apologize for that. But, as I said, I'll go back and say, Mr. Humphreys, he did a wage study for the Middle Tennessee, Mid-Cumberland Human Resources Agency. He provided us one just out of courtesy. He's not really interested in doing it. He quoted $60,000, which is kind of extreme. So I would like to rule out Mr. Humphreys. The last two was a Mr. Russell and Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson and Mr. Russell were both highly recommended. They're spoke well of. However, Mr. Thompson has been more responsive to any queries we put forth. And as far as getting documentation, Mr. Russell took about 3 months to get his proposal after we met with him. And also Mr. Thompson is currently working in Smith County doing a wage study for them as well. So I would recommend retaining Mr. Thompson's organization. Now, he does quote a price that goes up maybe a little over about $3,000 more than Mr. Russell. However, given that he did put forth in December, he suggested that he could have it done by April 1st. It might be a little bit later than that, given the timeline into January. However, he felt very confident he could get it done in time for our budget. So my personal feeling, given our response from Mr. Thompson, I would recommend Mr. Thompson. However, that is the will of the committee. And again, I can answer any further questions at this time if you have any.
How much was his?
Mr. Thompson's was a range between $15,900 and $18,150, and that just varied based on any incidentals that came up or anything like that. So he tried to give us a range just based on what he's seen before. So that's his range. Mr. Russell's quote was a total not to exceed $15,500. So Mr. Thompson is possibly a little bit more expensive. However, he has been much more responsive than Mr. Russell has at this point. And again, I want to stress they're both highly recommended, but based on that responsiveness from Mr. Thompson, I would recommend retaining Mr. Thompson.
Okay, with that being said, at this moment, I'd like to open the floor for anybody who'd like to make a motion on what the mayor has proposed here, with Mr. Thompson being the chosen person to do the wage study. Anybody like to make that motion?
That we go with BTA.
What?
Try again. I think it turned off.
I'd like to make a motion that we go with BTA.
Okay, I have a motion to go with the BTA. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to go with that choice. That's Mr. Thompson, isn't that right, Mayor?
Yes, sir. That's his organization. It's called Barris Thompson, and I can't remember. I think it's Associates, so BTA. Yes, sir. That's Mr. Thompson.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second to carry that forward, Mr. Thompson's group. Mary Ann, all in favor of this motion, vote yes or aye. Mary Ann, roll call.
Bill Ferguson,
Yes.
Shane Merton,
Yes.
Coy Dickey. Amber Russell,
Yes.
Vicky Howard. Um, 6 yes and 2 absent.
I have a question. This will go to the full body for a vote.
Yes, sir. As this is entered into a professional services agreement, it will have to be approved by the commission before I have authority to sign on the county's behalf.
Okay. So that does pass and move on to the full commission. So that's item B. Item C is direct deposit tonight. Once again, we had talked about that. I know that Vicky was looking into that. I know this is a topic that we all want to try to see if we can get there, but the hurdle is how we currently pay the employees right now and the possible burden that it might put on some of the employees that really can't go too far without that money coming in at the end of the week. But we're kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit because it causes so many problems. It's not that the people would not get paid. It's just that there would be a time period in which the payment would be delayed to some of those employees. So Amy's familiar with this. We talked a little bit with her and Vicky. And so who wants to take the ball and talk to us about that a little bit? Amy, do you know about it? Mayor, what do y'all think? I'm going to put on mute.
I don't think we decided who was going to go first.
Well, I'll get the ball rolling because I can always refer it to my staff. So basically the issue is we are currently on what's called current as far as our payroll, which means the payroll comes in, it's submitted to the mayor's office on Wednesday. Renee gets it, starts processing the payroll, working with Vicky. She gets it all lined out, cuts checks on Thursday. I sign them on Thursday and they are handed out to the employees via their department heads or elected officials on Friday. So we get paid 2 days after the timesheets are submitted. To do direct deposit, we will have to go what's called accrued, which means you get paid 2 weeks after you submit that period's timesheet. So how it would work is that we would actually have 1 month where somebody wouldn't get paid because you have to do 2 weeks to get to the accrued and then you got 2 more weeks before they get paid. So that creates a gap there in their payment. The only way we've seen to compensate them for that gap is to do a bonus. So they basically have 27 pay periods. We have talked to CTAS, Mr. Robertson about this, and he kind of agreed with our assessment on that situation. That's kind of the high level issue as far as switching from what we're doing now to direct deposit is going from current to accrued. That's been the holdup in the past administration, and we've been looking for ways to kind of get around that. We also would have to find a bank that can do direct deposit. So it may require moving from Citizens to Wilson, which is not ideal for the trustee's office and accounting and all this stuff, but there are little details here and there. And again, that's a high level view of it. If we need to get further in depth, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to bring one of my people up here. They can either whisper in my ear or they can take the microphone, however they prefer to do it.
I do want to say that was kind of a bird's eye view of payroll. Once Renee does receive timesheets, it's almost a madhouse how she has to go through them because she's calculating the hours. We're still on manual timesheets. We have them come in at all hours of the day. And if there's anybody that takes vacation or sick, we're having to chase them down to get the appropriate paperwork. So it does take quite a while to get all that processed where we can actually process the payroll.
Yeah, I would just invite, once the administration building finally can open back up, I would invite any of the committee members or commissioners want to come down on Wednesday and experience payroll. You're more than welcome to be there. Pack your lunch. It's going to be something very interesting. It's very eye-opening how that works. I haven't been an employee and never seen that side of it. It's very, very eye-opening. And then again, what I presented was very 30,000 foot view. Amy could provide a little bit more information, but if you got any deeper questions, and I will also say, as far as our timesheets, we are looking into also moving to an electronic timekeeping system. Now, we'll have to work with the sheriff's department because they've got officers out in the field that need to clock in a little bit differently than somebody at maybe Public Works who has to report to a central location, and also ambulance service people. So we've got some considerations there we're going to have to work with, but we think there's a way we can do it through a vendor through local government so we can have that timekeeping system. We are currently looking into that. We had to really see what we could get that's compatible with our current payroll system. So I think we've got a good line on it right now, and that's something I personally want to go put into place as we do this, because that'll be a tremendous help to Renee and as far as timekeeping and everything else. So that's two issues all in one, but they're kind of the same thing. Give me just a second. I'll move to a different speaker.
Also wanted to go into, we have a question on the side over here of explaining the gap that's been mentioned. The gap is going from our current paying them 2 days after their timesheets to delaying that 2 weeks. That's where your gap is going to come from. So in order to get us into a delayed or accrued payroll, we need to have time to move that. And that's where that gap is. Does that answer the question that was asked?
Yeah. Amy, could you read off who that question came from in the question itself? I can't see it here, so I don't know if it's on the video or not.
That came from Chris Gregory with the Vidette.
Okay. That seemed like pretty good explanation. You want to add anything or details you think needs to be brought out that give a little bit better understanding of it? Or?
He did say that did answer the question.
Okay.
My understanding, we're basically having to deal with two issues. One is trying to get us to an accrual payroll system before we can do direct deposit. And we have to be on the accrual before we can do the direct deposit. Is that correct?
It would be highly recommended to do that. Yes. And there's also a third issue to throw into this is going from our current pay periods are a Thursday through Wednesday. We would like to move that to a Sunday through Saturday pay period.
And we did meet with representatives from both Citizens Bank and Wilson Bank and Trust and asked them about going to a direct deposit. And Wilson Bank and Trust said, given that we are on current, they didn't see any possible way that they could have it processed correctly. They highly recommended going to the accrued versus current because they said there was no way they could accommodate a current payroll.
Well, I understand the gap. I understand that some people feel like they're not going to get paid, but they're getting paid for their hours. And I know the few that are going to be inconvenienced, and it's going to be a hardship to some people that live from paycheck to paycheck. But I don't see that as being a reason not to do it when everybody knows it needs to be done, should have been done years ago. And if people know plenty of time ahead of time, oh, by the way, on July, you're going to have to wait. So if they're not responsible enough to be able to plan their bills, I'm sorry. I don't know if there's some way that we can do a partial payroll advance in advance or something to that effect. To help them through that. That brings in the question, okay, they get the payroll advance and they don't show up to work, then what do you do kind of thing. So I understand that there's a lot of what ifs. And I know y'all have looked at it 7 ways from Sunday, trying to figure out how we can do this, but I've said it for a year now. I really don't care. Just get it done.
So I agree with Dwight. It should definitely be done. And we can do advancements And there's also, if you're worried about somebody not working and, after they get their advancement, we can do contracts. I've done a contract before. So I definitely think that we should move forward and not just talk about it, but actually put things in motion. So that's just my 2 cents.
I don't want anybody to be confused. We're not trying to stop anything from happening. We are looking for ideas of how can we move forward with this. Everybody, even me, Renee, Vic, we all want to be on direct deposit. We, especially through this COVID-19 pandemic, we see the absolute need for this.
If there's a time to do it, the decision to do it would be now, maybe for a future date, but because of what has happened, it just spurred on. I know Shane Burton has talked to me about this a lot. Shane, you have any, and back there in the back, you have anything you'd like to add to what we're talking about tonight?
I don't know if Amy can push it out far enough to where people can save that $1 or $2 or maybe $3, $5 a day to cover up that 2 weeks. I really don't like going the advancement side as far as paying people for not having any money on the books, I guess you could say. But I'm all for it. I mean, this should have been done a long time ago, and I think it would take a lot of pressure off of the 3 ladies that have to do this every 2 weeks in a 2.5 day time frame. And I think it needs to be done.
Mayor, I think the consensus from this committee here is to maybe move it forward for the consideration of the full body. But the question becomes, what's the best way to implement this? And I think what Mr. Jewell had said earlier is accurate, that maybe we do this with a future date in mind to allow people to prepare for it. And again, it's not taking any money away. It's deferring it at a future date. So I'll let you speak for just a minute. I'll turn it back on mute.
Well, if we do any changeover, we don't propose doing it before the beginning of the next fiscal year. So no earlier than July 1st. So that would give more than enough heads up if that's what you want to provide for them to save or whatnot. There will be some employees who have to get a bank account. Some of them don't have any. Both the banks we spoke to would be willing to give them a free checking account and provide them an ATM card. So there might be some hesitancy there, but they're going to get a free ATM card and free account. There was no issue there. Again, I want to stress, to me, I prefer direct deposit. I've been on direct deposit. I don't have to pick 26 weeks out of the year to go on vacation because I got to come back and get my paycheck on one. So I prefer that. It would have been a tremendous help during this pandemic, getting people's paid, and also doing the electronic timesheet would have been a tremendous help as well. So as we go forward, this is definitely something we want to look at, is just exactly how are we going to implement it. So given the response or comments from the committee, we can put forth, if the committee, do you have one you're wanting to vote on, or you just want us to continue to try to come up with solutions and then present that after this is moved forward to the full body? What is the will of the committee on that?
Well, there are different companies that do timekeeping. Like, for instance, at my hospital, we do something called Kronos, and they have representatives that can come to businesses to talk about it. So could we get several of those to give us bids for, what might work best for us?
We are talking with companies, especially one that is currently involved with our accounting software, and getting quotes for that.
No, Mr. Dickey, just let me change the microphone and then use the PA system.
I think we should try to be considerate of the people, the employees, but we shouldn't let their reservations or their not wanting to do it keep us from doing it. Is what I hate to put it that bluntly, but find the way to do it. And if it inconveniences somebody, tell them I'm sorry you're inconvenienced and get it done.
I agree.
Mr. Dickey has a question.
Yes. Well, if it's complicated to get paid every 2 weeks, why don't you do it one time a month? And then the supervisor turn in the hours about the 28th, the end of the month, and that way the process can close.
It's not a question of being paid every 2 weeks. In fact, being paid once a month is probably going to create a whole lot more chaos for my department. Because that's a whole lot more hours that you have to calculate at one time. And 2 weeks is fine. That's not the issue that we're having. It's having all the timesheets turned in on Wednesday to pay you on Friday. So we're trying to get to a delayed system for that.
Basically what it is we'd be moving from a system where the timesheets are submitted on Wednesday and they have to, the time is either completely calculated at the end of the workday on Wednesday or very, very early on Thursday, so they can cut the checks, I can sign them, and they can be handed out on Friday. So you're actually working with a day and maybe a quarter to get everything, all your documentation, everything calculated, versus if we move to this accrued, you'll actually have a week or so to calculate that. And so it gives you a little bit more leeway as to getting that documentation, getting all that stuff straightened out. But to do the direct deposit, we have to be on accrued. Neither of the banks we talk to can do it on a current payroll. They have to be accrued. So that's just moving from the current to accrued. That creates a gap where they won't get paid, and that's the issue. And that's been the holdup previously, and that some of the cost and getting to the specifics worked out. So I think we are closer. This committee is just, again, my question is, are you wanting to go forward on us? Basically, are you wanting to pass it to the full commission and then us keep working on it and come back with further recommendations? Or is this committee wanting to pick one course of action tonight and then have us work on that? That's my question.
Well, we voted before to go ahead and do it. You know, you've had the instructions to do this, get this done. So I don't see that we need to vote again to do it. What we were waiting
And I'll also
for.
bring up, I brought this to the executive committee in my first year in office, and when you heard the price tag, they all said no. That had been the issue to this point in the previous administration and this administration. It was $91,000 to go from current to accrued. It is now $132,000 roughly to go from current to accrued. That's fine. My question is, are we going to present, do you want my office to further present options as we go to the commission after this meeting, or are you wanting to zone in on one particular course of action?
I say take a course of action.
Well, as I look through the minutes from our last meeting in July, I think to refer to back to what Dwight's talking about, it says down at the bottom, it says, after some discussion, Shane Burton made a motion to move the county payroll to direct deposit and employee pay periods uniform Monday through Friday to be January the 1st, 2024. And of course, it was seconded by Richard Johnson, but obviously we've missed that. But I still think that gives the directive that that's what this body wants to do. And Dwight's correct. It looks like we've already passed that. Maybe we need to go before the full body now, but I think that directive is pretty well set.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would point out that in 2015, the county commission passed a resolution giving the mayor the authority to put it into place whenever he or she chooses, and no action of a committee can override an action of the commission. But at this point, I don't really care. We need to go to accrued. I'm just wanting to know, at this point, are you wanting to go ahead and just like, let's move this to commission, and then we present 2 or 3 other scenarios how we can move forward? Or is this commission going to tell us a specific way? Because I'm getting kind of mixed messages here right now, and I don't know if you're wanting us to present options going forward, or if you're wanting us to hone in on one, and that's what we're going with.
I think we wanted y'all to tell us how it best would be done. And I think that's what this committee, the commission, most of the commission was waiting for. And I know that there's options. I understand. You know, do you end it on the Wednesday or do you give them a little 2-day pay period to the Saturday? Or do you have to extend the 2 weeks to 2.5 weeks to make it come out on Saturday? You know, there's all those type questions, but I think Vicky, Renee, Amy, Mayor, you are the people that deal with it and are going to have to implement it. And I really just think the commission wants it to go as smoothly as it can go, is all I'm saying. And I think we've seriously been waiting for y'all to tell us how best for it to happen. And then I don't think we're going to argue about it. Maybe we will, but
Well, our recommendation, I believe my third month in office was to go from current to accrued, because there's gonna be a gap, give a bonus. And that's where the holdup came in on previously. So our recommendation is to go from current to accrued, work with the banks to set up our direct deposit, whichever one can do it, whether it's Citizens or Wilson. Currently, we're at Citizens. We'd like to stay there if we can. And then pair that with this electronic timekeeping system. So our recommendation was to go from current to accrued, give a bonus payment to make up that lost month right there. And then we can calculate that going forward. That's our recommendation. So is that what the committees want to do?
Yes. I make that motion. Yes, we need to proceed that way.
Yeah, I like it too. Do we need do we need to do a vote on it in a motion or what?
You vote on whether, if you're going to do that, somebody need to make a motion, be seconded, be voted on, to move it to the county commission.
Okay, I will make the motion that it gets forwarded on to the commission with the parameters that the mayor just discussed.
Okay, I have a motion to move that forward. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion on that? Because I guess one of the questions I would have on that particular topic would be, when we talk about a bonus, do we know what type of revenues we're talking about to do that?
I believe it was roughly 91,000 before the 50-cent increase. After the 50-cent increase, it's approximately 132. Don't quote me on that exact figure, but it's somewhere around in that with the 50-cent increase for that pay period, because we would give them a bonus that's equal to their normal pay for that pay period.
I would also like to propose that we do have funding from the local government support grant that we can use if we wanted to incorporate this in next year's budget.
Go, Amy.
But again, that is something that commission needs to vote on and approve.
That would fully fund it?
That would fully fund it from both urban side and the general fund.
Yeah, the general fund received $730,000, and I've been working with department heads to get their request as far as what they would like to fund with that money. And also we got $273,000 in the urban services that we're going to have to use. That money has to be spent by, I believe, December 31st of this year. So I think from the departments I've gotten their requests so far, I think we're easily over $500,000 of that requested to be spent in a certain particular way. So I was trying to hold back some of that to pay for this if that's the way we went. We just needed some direction about is that what we're going to do.
I don't have a problem with that.
Sounds good to me.
That being the case, do we add that as an amendment to it, that that's where the funding would come from, so the full commission could better understand that? Is that what we're thinking about here?
I would suggest that if that's how the committee would like to move forward.
I'd entertain that as amendment to the motion in the second, that we would fund that through the mechanism that the mayor had described just a minute, or that Amy had described just a second ago. And I have a motion on that amendment.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion? Do I need it? I need a second. Mr. Coy's got the second. All right. Now, do I need to go back? We need to vote on the motion first, then vote on the amendment second, or can we put that together, Dwight?
Vote on the amendment and then vote on the motion.
All right, let's vote on the amendment first then. All in favor of that amendment, that we're going to be using the funds that was in the account that Amy had talked about. Forgive me, I don't remember the name of the account.
Local support grant.
The support group. Okay, let's go with the roll call. That Mary Ann, please.
Bill Ferguson,
Yes.
Shane Burton,
Yes.
Roy Dickey, Amber Russell,
Yes.
Vicky Howard. 6 yes and 2 absent.
Is that everybody?
The mayor froze up. Could you repeat that, Commissioner Baker?
I said it was 6 yes and 2 absent.
Okay, so that motion does carry then. So let's go ahead to the motion itself, or that amendment does carry. Let's go on then to the motion itself. We have a motion and a second on that to move this to the full body to implement this with the different type of pay that we're doing here. Mary Ann, roll call, please.
Bill Ferguson,
Yes.
Shane Burton,
Yes.
Coy Dickey, Amber Russell,
Yes.
Vicky Howard. 6 yes and 2 absent.
That motion does carry then. So it'll go before the full body. But now, Mayor, explain that to me one more time as we leave this topic. You have the ability to do this from what was passed in 2015. Can you go through that one more time?
There was a resolution. I'm sorry, I don't remember the resolution number, and my computer's acting up, so I can't go back and find it right now.
Well, that's fine.
That was passed by the county commission that gave the mayor the authority to move to direct deposit when, at that time, he decided could go there. Now, there was still an issue when I came into office, and that resolution, again, I can provide that to you tomorrow. Just right now, my computer's acting funky and I can't get it to you, and we can get that resolution. And again, I believe that was a 2015 resolution.
No, that's fine. That sounds good. Okay. All right. So that covers our direct deposit line item number C. So I'm going to move on to D. Any other items we'd like to discuss tonight? Any of the members want to bring anything up to discuss?
Mr. Chairman, I just will address, I had said it, I don't remember if it's in front of this committee, I think it may have been in front of steering, that Mr. Beller, we had met with Mr. Beller on this pretty comprehensive overhaul of our personnel policy we're looking at right now. And given that we were looking at doing a wage study, his advice was to pair those when we submit this to the committee. So once we get that wage study complete and ready to be submitted, we envision submitting those as kind of a package to the commission for their approval, because we're going to incorporate the pay scale and everything into the personnel policy. And hopefully that'll get the commission out of discussing raises, and you'll only be looking at cost of living, because there should be pay scale and everything inside that personnel policy. And then that'll also be paired with the employee review you've been asking about, because the employee review will then be used to determine any merit rate increases or anything like that. And I will ask that it be a merit increase, not a seniority increase.
Okay. Any other topics there? If not, I'm going to move out from other on to number 5, public comment. Anybody in the public? Is anybody there? I mean, I can't see anybody but us. So I don't know. Chris, Greg, anybody else? I don't know.
Mr. Gerger's attending the line. Sheriff Russell's here, and Brian King is here, along with Renee Pridemore and Vicky Howard. And Mr. King or Sheriff, anybody you have any comments for the committee? Everyone is shaking their head no here, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. Okay. Well, now that we passed the public comment time, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Coy, got it? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for coming out tonight. I think we got the checkers across the board a little further tonight. That's good. All right. That's it. That's a wrap. Thanks so much.
Thank you.